Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Please subscribe my channel and like for latest news. Today we're diving deep into a powder keg in Eastern Europe. Lukashenko trapped between Putin and Kyiv, Belarus on the brink. As war rages in Ukraine, Belarus finds itself in a crucible, squeezed between loyalty to Moscow and pressures from Kyiv and the West. We'll unravel how Alexander Lukashenko has become a sort of geopolitical tightrope walker, where a single misstep could topple everything. Belarus is not just a passive bystander in this war. Since 2022, it has served as a critical rear base for Russian operations, launch sites for missiles, staging ground for logistics, and transit for troops. Yet despite this cooperation, Lukashenko has publicly insisted that Belarusian forces would not be sent into Ukraine unless Belarus itself came under attack. He's tried to maintain a veneer of sovereignty, even as he allows Russian forces deeper access to Belarusian territory. This posture exposes the paradox Lukashenko now faces. On one side, Putin demands loyalty, further integration and military support. On the other, Kyiv, backed by the West, pushes for Belarus to defect, resist, or at least reduce its role in Russia's war. Internally, his regime also grapples with growing discontent from the Belarusian opposition and fears of internal destabilization. Let's break this down. First, by looking at how Lukashenko came to this predicament. Historically, Lukashenko has always walked a precarious diplomatic line between Moscow and Europe. He has relied heavily on Russian subsidies, energy discounts, and security guarantees to prop up his regime. But at times, he has also pushed back, asserting economic independence, demanding more favorable terms from Russia, and cultivating ties with the West when possible. At the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, Belarus quickly became a logistical lifeline for Russia. Russian troops and military hardware streamed through Belarus to assist assaults in northern Ukraine. Belarusian territory became a springboard for missile strikes, artillery positions, and shelling of northern Ukrainian regions. But crucially, despite many rumors and claims, Belarus itself has not officially committed troops into the fighting, at least not large-scale deployments. This awkward arrangement suited Lukashenko. He could gain Moscow's favor by facilitating Russia's campaign without making himself a direct actor. At the same time, he tried to avoid full entanglement or becoming a target himself. But that balance is becoming untenable. From Moscow's perspective, Belarus is a vassal state, an indispensable corridor. For Putin, it's not enough for Lukashenko to merely acquiesce. Minsk must increasingly tie itself into Russian strategy, integrate defense systems, allow nuclear deployments, and place itself at Russia's mercy when required. In recent years, Putin and Lukashenko signed a treaty that extended Russian security guarantees to Belarus, explicitly including possible use of nuclear capabilities deployed in Belarus. Under the revised nuclear doctrine, Belarus is now considered under Russia's nuclear umbrella, which significantly raises the stakes for Minsk. It means that any attack on Belarus could trigger a nuclear response under the Moscow-controlled doctrine. Even more, Russia is reportedly preparing to deploy advanced missiles, such as intermediate-range systems, into Belarusian territory. These deployments are not just symbolic. They alter the strategic map. Suddenly, Belarus is not just a rear base, but a forward front line, possibly turning it into a combat zone itself. This complicates Lukashenko's sovereignty further. When weapons systems and nuclear forces are on your soil but controlled by another state, your independence becomes nominal. He may have the power to greenlight or veto use, but the balance of control tilts toward Moscow. From Kyiv's side, Belarus is viewed as an aggressor, complicit in Russia's war infrastructure. As Ukraine fights to reclaim territory, it sees Belarus's role as part of the enemy network. Ukraine's diplomacy and military planning increasingly consider Minsk a partner of Moscow. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials have argued that Belarus's territory used against Ukraine is unlawful under international law. For Lukashenko, this is a reputation disaster. He cannot present himself to his people or to reluctant regional states as a neutral arbiter. He is forced to pick sides. Meanwhile, internally, things are shifting in Belarus. The opposition movement, both inside and in exile, is gaining energy, emboldened by Russia's setbacks and by Belarusian dissatisfaction with autocracy and Russian dominance. The Belarusian partisan movement aims to resist both the Lukashenko regime and the Russian presence. Some of these groups are believed to have clandestine ties to Ukraine or operate in coordination with Ukrainian security. These insurgent acts, sabotage, protests, and dissent threaten Lukashenko's control. He already clamps down hard, arrests, censorship, and tight surveillance, yet the costs are rising. The regime can only repress so much without risking backlash, collapse of morale, or fragmentation within security forces. So Lukashenko's squeeze is now direct. Putin wants deeper integration, increased military commitment, and full alignment. Kyiv and its Western backers demand Belarus disavow the war, cease logistic support, cut off Russian access, potentially even switch sides. And domestic pressure demands reforms, human rights, or regime change. Where might Lukashenko lean? One path is doubling down on Russia, to become a full partner, absorb more Russian command, and suppress internal resistance. That gives him Moscow's backing, but effectively ends any pretense of Belarusian sovereignty. He risks becoming merely a provincial governor under the Kremlin's orbit. Another option is gradual hedging, trying to open limited overtures with the West, offering token cooperation, releasing prisoners, making economic appeals. Indeed, Lukashenko has sometimes flirted with that by releasing political prisoners or making statements of openness to reconciliation. But those moves often appear symbolic and insufficient to satisfy Western demands. A third, more dangerous option is partial pivot, under the right pressures. Perhaps Lukashenko could quietly shift allegiance toward Kyiv's side, or at least attempt to distance Belarus from Russia's actions. But given Moscow's control over critical systems and military dominance, such a pivot would be fraught with risk and likely provoke severe retaliation from Russia. One clue comes from Lukashenko's own rhetoric. At times, he distances himself from outright war responsibility, claiming Belarus is not at war, claiming he had no knowledge of Russian plans, or decrying escalations. That suggests he's trying to maintain strategic ambiguity. But actions speak louder. Deployments, treaties, control architecture. Those are aligning Belarus ever closer to Moscow. One more element to watch is the western border. Belarus borders NATO members and EU countries. Any miscalculation could spark a wider regional crisis. The new Russia-Belarus joint drills have already rattled nerves in Poland, Lithuania, and beyond. If Belarus becomes an active staging ground for cross-border missile launches, drones, or incursions, NATO may respond with force or sanctions. In this scenario, Belarus risks being transformed from a zone of transit to a conflict zone itself. Civilian areas could be targeted. Russia might quietly retaliate if Kyiv counterattacks through Belarusian territory. Given all this, what is Lukashenko likely to do? The most plausible bet is more of the same. Deeper integration with Moscow, while trying to retain minimal distance so that he can claim some independence. He will suppress dissent brutally. He will resist overt Ukrainian or Western overtures unless they come with overwhelming guarantees. He will try to walk the razor's edge, but he may not succeed. Internal instability, regime fractures, or a decisive shift in the war's balance could force his hand. If Russia experiences significant military setbacks, the pressure on Belarus to reevaluate its alignment intensifies. Conversely, if Russia's position consolidates, Minsk may find itself fully subsumed. Belarus is now at the precipice. Lukashenko is trapped, too closely tethered to Putin to break away, yet under pressure from Kyiv and his own people. His options are closing. His only hope is that the war elsewhere distracts or weakens Russia enough that Belarus can eventually renegotiate its path. This isn't theoretical. Recent events show how volatile the situation is. Russian missile systems have been moved closer to Belarus. Moscow pushes integration agreements. Opposition figures in exile are more vocal, and Western sanctions and diplomatic efforts intensify. The balance of power may shift suddenly. In short, Belarus is no longer just a backstage theater. It is emerging as a front in its own right. Lukashenko's fate is tied to how Russia fares, how Ukraine pressures, and how Belarusian people respond. He is walking a collapsing bridge. One day it may snap. Thank you for watching this breakdown. If you found this useful, do like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis and updates.